Hello and welcome to Live Your Love, the Alicia Doss Show. Today I am absolutely thrilled to welcome the beautiful Libby and Stephen Scooter Weintraub.
Hi.
Hi.
So happy to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, my pleasure, as you know. This is going to be a very intimate show. These are two of my best friends in the world. And really through this show, you're going to learn how to transform even the most challenging of circumstance into spiritual transcendence. They have an incredible story and so much wisdom to share. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about them and then we'll jump right in. So we'll start with Libby, who wrote the most amazing book. Libby June Weintraub is a multifaceted soul, a mother, artist, writer, and a beautiful poet. Libby originally hails from Western Australia and now resides in the warm embrace of Santa Monica, California, alongside her husband, Stephen Scooter Weintraub. In 2014, their lives were forever changed when they welcomed and sadly said goodbye to their stillborn child, Magnolia Grace. She was born. Words on Loss and Liberation marks Libby's first book, the first of many, I very much hope, a collection of poems that will absolutely stun you. They have been a steady companion on her journey of healing. In her writing, Libby shares the most profound experiences of discovering connection, compassion, joy, love, understanding that lies on the other side of grief. Libby hosts annual retreats. You just did one last weekend, right?
Yeah.
For mothers who have experienced pregnancy and infant loss. She is donating 100% of the proceeds of She Was Born to a beautiful organization called Every Mother Counts, founded by Christy Turlington Burns, which is an organization to advance improvements in maternal health. So please, I will tell you all about finding this book. It's on BookBaby, it's on Amazon. Buy this book. Stephen Scooter Weintraub is an artist, manager, producer, and Emmy Award-winning music documentary filmmaker. He made me shorten his bio, which could go on for days because he was really a legend. Sorry, I had to fit that in. Truly, he is a true artist in his work. He currently manages Sheryl Crow, Gary Clark Jr., and works closely with Eric Clapton as a consultant and producer of film and special concert events. At the beginning of his career, Scooter supervised sponsorship and tour marketing for the likes of Sting, who christened him Scooter, Rod Stewart, and Michael Jackson. Scooter has managed Sheryl Crow for the past 25 years. Sheryl will be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year, has 9 Grammys. Scooter is a musical producer, curator, and film producer of Eric Clapton's iconic Crossroads festivals. He's produced 8 music films for Clapton. The first of these Emmy-nominated films, Nothing But the Blues, was written and directed by Scooter with Martin Scorsese producing. Scooter serves as a U.S. board member on Clapton's Crossroads Treatment Center for Drug and Alcohol Addiction. Scooter most recently completed writing and co-producing Eric Clapton, A Life in 12 Bars for Showtime, which was nominated for a Grammy Award and the 2019 Music Industry Award for Best Music Film, as well as Sheryl Crow's newly released film on Showtime titled Sheryl, which to me is, that film is such a service to so many. Heartfelt welcome to these incredible human beings.
Nice to be here.
Thank you for having us.
It's truly my privilege. So, beloved watchers and listeners, these are two of my heroes. I was privileged to be in the room when Libby gave birth to Magnolia Grace, and it was truly one of the most beautiful, spiritual, transformative events I will ever get to witness. And, you know, I would love to hear from you. I think the statistic is something like 60% of couples that go through infant loss. And by the way, this is a show not just on infant loss, but it's really a show, you're going to learn so much about grief and how to transform loss into deep spiritual transformation. So, Before we get into what's really, I believe, going to transform your lives, because we all deal with moments of tragedy, and these two will really teach us through their example and through their heartfelt wisdom how to transform that into triumph. We will start, as we always do, with calling in the light so that this show is really lifted up into that higher level. That is who we are. So if you would, please just touch someone near you, and that can be right in your heart if no one is physically present. And just for a moment, just focus on your breath. And just breathe in all the love of the universe right into your heart chakra in the middle of your chest. Breathe that love in. And as you exhale, just let go of anything less than love. And again, just breathe in love, the love of God, the love of really who we truly are together, and exhale and just melt into the moment. Let your shoulders drop. Come into that conscious connection with that which joins us together rather than divides us. In the name of love, we call ourselves forward into the highest within us and without, that which is the true overarching consciousness of grace. We come into a one accord now, joining heart to heart. Though we can't always see each other, we know that we are joined as one in love. We place this time together, this beautiful show wherein we will learn to use everything to our spiritual advancement, learning and living into the goodness of God. Place all of it into the light, each one present, each one to hear, to watch. In every way, we send a special blessing to our planet and a tender blessing to all parents who have experienced loss, to all tender hearts that have experienced loss. May we all be lifted up. And so be it. Would you like to add anything?
Just that we continue coming into deeper levels of awareness of love within our own hearts, and understanding the magnitude of our love and the impact that that can have in the lives of all those around us, especially during this time on our planet, that we may continue awakening as a species into deeper levels of love and compassion, and that anything and all that no longer serves us be lifted and cleared and transmuted harmlessly and perfectly back into the light, that we may come into that one accord within our own hearts with all beings and truly embrace a new way of being, so that we can invite in the experience of heaven on earth. Thank you so much for having us on the show. I really appreciate this conversation, this opportunity to bring forward into a public setting a conversation that is still very much hidden behind closed doors. And October being National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month seems like the perfect opportunity to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you for having us.
It's always my pleasure to spend time with you. Listeners, to let you know how heartfelt and intimate this conversation is, I do want to tell you that I had the incredible privilege of being in the room when Libby gave birth to Magnolia Grace, and I have never witnessed anything so brave, so beautiful. There was, of course, the deep mourning already occurring, but there was equally a sacredness in the room. And both of you, while of course you allowed yourself to feel the grief, you were both in such a place of transcendence.
Yeah, I for myself, yes, was definitely feeling that. For Steve, I think it was a little a little more difficult. And that's the beauty of bringing this conversation forward, is that that's often the case with parents, is that the mother is holding the child and has a direct line of communication with that child throughout the pregnancy. And in many ways a very intimate relationship, whilst the other partner, the father, doesn't necessarily have that connection. So, you know, when it happened, I was with my mum, and I had just gone to visit my doctor, not my OBGYN, but another doctor who I was working with. I had some physical issues, and he was helping me just physiologically. So I had an appointment with him that morning, and my mum had just gotten off the plane from Australia, and Steve was at home still sleeping. So I scooped Mum up, we went to the doctor's office, and that's when I didn't know exactly what had happened, but I knew something was not right, which is why I called you. Yeah, I hadn't started my contractions, but I had started bleeding, and so that was an indication that something was off. But to tie into what you were just saying, it was a very profound experience for me, because I did know she had passed before I went into labour. It wasn't something that we found out about during labour, which I don't know if you could say anything about this experience was easy, but it certainly helped knowing, not finding out during labour. But yeah, there was an energy that really took me over. And it was very powerful, and so I think that's sort of what you're talking about, that was in the space. It was very, it's hard to describe. It's really hard to describe, you know. It could be easy to say, well, it was shock, but it wasn't shock because of what I was feeling inside my heart. I knew I was coming into contact with an energy that I had never really experienced before. And in that sense, it felt very sacred, and it felt very holy. And, you know, there is this saying, you know, that there is this peace that surpasses all understanding, and that's truly what was happening. There was a peace inside that surpassed any understanding, because the reality is our daughter had just died. And of course there was all of the deep emotions that came along with that knowing, but there was also this other energy present, this stillness, this quiet, this peace inside of myself that I hadn't experienced before. I touched into it a little bit in my meditation. I touched into it a little bit through my yoga practices. And I've been a seeker my whole life. And this was something that I was have been chasing. And I found it so intriguing that in the midst of this devastating loss, that this feeling that I'd been searching for showed up. And I can only attest it to the fact that, you know, I had all these hopes and dreams and all these worries and concerns, and in that moment, realizing that she had passed, all of that fell away. All of that fell away, and I was left with the present moment. I was left with the reality of what was unfolding for us. And so obviously I had to call Steve, and I think I actually called you before I called him.
You did.
And your first question was, where is he? And you know, are you having a root canal? You're having a root canal. You're like, I'm having a root canal. And I'm like, why are you picking up the phone? You were like, I don't know. I felt I needed to pick up the phone. So you cancelled your root canal.
Well, I was in the midst of it. I was like wired open, and I said, I have to take this call. And he's like, you can't. And I said, I have to. And
that's so wild.
And he said, and I literally, I literally left.
You left. You cancelled all of Michael's appointments, and you headed to the house. And I hadn't yet called him. I think you arrived around the time.
That's why I asked where he was, because I wanted to be there when you told him. Because you were going to the doctor.
Right.
I didn't want you to be alone.
Right, you came over. The two of you came over. Right.
Yeah, so it's been an incredible, life-altering experience. But what I'm really excited to talk about today with all of you is the incredible healing and transformation that's occurred within us as individuals and within us as a couple and within really the entire community around us. I think that would really be of great service and very much what Magnolia would want. And now with all this time and distance, it'll be 9 years this November, and I can't even believe that she would be 9. You know, my mind often goes to like, what would she look like? What would her voice sound like? But I keep getting drawn back to sort of the deeper purpose for her being here, and I really feel like the words that came through me during that time, which was just a part of my healing, you know, and sharing them with you and sharing them with my community, I really realized like, wow, there's probably most definitely an opportunity for others to also receive healing from these words. So I never intended to write a book. My intention was to heal, and writing became my access to that healing. So I'm just so thankful that the book is here. And in many ways, you know, she gets to live in the world now through this work, and we're both really hoping, our intention is that this bring healing to others. Yeah.
Well, it absolutely already has, and I've been witnessing that in your life, the healing that it's brought forward. And, you know, the question that I want to start with is probably not the one you would have thought. We will absolutely, through all this conversation, I want them to understand how you have turned loss into triumph, because that's universal. We all experience loss, and it's really how we approach it, how we really rise up into, there's a sliver of faith within me that knows this is for me, not against me.
I had that experience.
Did you tell us about
I think right from the moment I heard about it, when you called and then you were at the door, then I kind of went into fight or flight kind of mode, and I was worried about Libby, so I was like, let's get there and let's support and do that. And then, I mean, the physical part of it and the visceral loss part was always there throughout the whole that whole ensuing 24 hours. I don't even know how long it was. It was a long time. But there was like a download happening at the same time, and we might have talked about it during it.
We did.
Well, it's divided into a few things: the physical, and then the experiences I've had in life. This is reality right now, and be in the reality. So I was telling myself that, but then, and I can attest to this more in hindsight, but I could sense it in real time at the time. There was some kind of download happening about, okay, this is how it is. This is how it is going down. This is real. There's a teaching, the teaching. This thing kept coming in, the teaching. There's a teaching. I'm not going to figure that out in this moment of trauma, but I'm going to stay present to that. And that ensued for the whole period following. And it grew into more revelation and wisdom as time went on. And then in hindsight now, I can say that it was how it was meant, you know, and it was written, or however you would like to say it, and maybe even further than that, and we can get into that a little later if you like, that Magnolia and spirit of some sort was watching and directing, you know, kind of. So that awareness of that, I had that in a less tangible way than I do now, but I had it. It guided me in my place of the role of our healing journey, with or without knowing it, you know. But as time went on, it became more evident that this was part of the play, you know, the divine play, if you will. And that has proven to be it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a weird thing, time and space and life.
Right.
What is where, you know? It's all kind of one thing when you get down to it, you know. This is getting heady, but
Not at
you
all.
know,
I mean, this is the show.
yeah, I know. It's a good show to do this. Yeah. So, you know, I had the same fears and traumas going on in real time, and like, oh my God, what, and the pile of what are we going to do there? How are we going to get home? Oh my, you know, all these things, and then this other guidance of being staying in the moment. But Libby laying there with her job to birth a child that wasn't going to be breathing was for all of us in the room, Michael included, was a guide in focus and being in the moment, because that is what it took for you. It was a massive amount of courage and focus to be there for 9 hours and know the result already.
Yes.
And that was playing upon me, oh my God, this is...
Well, yeah, well, that's the thing too. People are like, you actually gave birth to her? And I was like, yeah. Yeah, I wanted to. You know, I guess, I don't know why so many people assume, well, she's dead, just take her out, you know, and say goodbye. But I really...
Well, don't even say goodbye.
Right, right.
No, don't even say goodbye.
Believe it didn't happen and get on your horse.
Well, thankfully, in this day and age, we're given the dignity of choosing into that. And so I chose into having the birth, you know, not as I had planned, but having my beautiful birth, you know. She was my girl, and I wanted to make it beautiful, and it was so beautiful to have you there and have my mother there and have Steve there and have Michael present. I mean, there was so much energy I was present to, surging through my body, and if it wasn't for Michael holding my ankle for, you know, grounding that energy, I don't know what would have happened. It was a lot of energy, a lot of love. I was shocked at how much love I could feel in the midst of that experience. But there were moments of deep joy and gratitude, and I think probably because the first time in my life I was really present. I was really present to how grateful I was to be her mother, to have made it this far. You know, so many women don't make it this far. And just in terms of statistics, you know, currently in the US, 24,000 babies die every year from stillbirth. So there's a lot of parents who have walked in our shoes, who are out there, who I'm hoping that some part of our experience can shed light on their own journey. And so there was all this beauty that came out of it, but it didn't diminish the anguish or the rage or the suffering that we experienced. That was such a huge part of the journey, and I really feel like one of the tremendous gifts Magnolia gave to me was the opportunity to, in mourning the loss of her physical presence, in mourning the loss of getting to raise her and love her and hold her and bathe her and laugh with her and play with her, in mourning all of that, there was now an opening for all of the other grief that I'd stuffed inside, and all of the other anger, and all the times I had not allowed myself the dignity to feel my feelings and to express what I was feeling. Like that all now came forward like this rolling wave of emotion. And you know, before before, a couple of months before. It was so amazing spending time with you and Michael, because I just felt so privileged, because we'd get these, you know, you'd come over and have dinner and we would do these blessings on her. So I feel like in so many ways, you're both her spiritual godparents, because whenever I would be around you guys, especially Michael, I don't know why, I would feel my whole belly light up, and it was almost like she had a spiritual, or has a spiritual connection with him. So, and I remember actually having a session with Michael, I think I was around 6 months pregnant, and I was curious to know how I could better show up for her. What was there anything I could be doing more of or less of that would make her experience more peaceful? But the burning question in my heart was really, what's our karma together? Why have we chosen this lifetime to come together? And I remember he got really quiet, and he said to me, I'll never forget this, "You're here to help heal the feminine wound." And I said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "That's all I'm getting. That's all I'm getting right now, but time will tell as your story with her unfolds." And I'm still not entirely sure what that means, but I think it has something to do with the grief of a mother, the grief of parents, really. But what do we do with our grief? You know, in our culture, we think about, I think about all the different ways different cultures celebrate death, but in the West, we tend to sort of, you know, we give ourselves a week to grieve, and then we move on, or we're encouraged to move on, or we're encouraged to have another one, like another child could ever replace the one that was lost. And I think that I know that there is a gift in grief. There's a gift in grief. There's a gift in giving over to and surrendering to that energy, because it is so directly tied to the currency of love. When we love someone so deeply, and there's all that expectation and longing and the anticipation of sharing that love with someone, and then that gets taken away, it's a really lonely place to reside in as a parent, because you've got nowhere for that love to go. You know, it's like when a woman loses a partner or a man, they're called a widow, you know, and it's like, we don't have a word for parents that lose a child. You know, when a child loses a parent, they're called an orphan, but there's no category for parents, and a lot of the time it can feel like living on this isolated island of loss.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
And you know, it's sort of hard to navigate that, especially in the beginning. So I think it would be really lovely to talk about the things that really helped us.
Well, the first thing I noticed was like that tragedy like that, when it's striking, it hits a chord like in spirit, the same way somebody channels music or something. It's just a moment where it connects, and maybe something else is connecting too. You know, it's a really cosmic conversation to have, because you know, we don't really know what's going on, but we know something's going on. And there's this very unseen connection that happened in that time that I'm much clearer about it now than I was while it was happening. And then it whatever that is, whether that's a spirit force, whether that's Magnolia, whether that's your internal spirit, or all those things are one, then you put one foot in front of the other, and there's an innate or divine kind of guidance playing out, and that took place at the same pace that. Like the 9 hours at 9 hours?
It was 15.
Okay, so the delivery time put forth a pace. It was a reset on the way we moved through things in life. And then we went home, and it was one breath at a time, one sleep at a time, one meal at a time, and then the unfolding of some pattern of moving forward. So that I do remember that part of it. And then I remember, because my experience was very different in the birth, and there were some really important things that happened, and I could speak about one or two of those, and then the downloads on what this is about slowly over time crystallize a little bit. And I think I got those first because you were physically healing, it was emotionally ravaging, and then I started to understand, okay, our job here is healing. And then healing takes on a new definition, because it isn't just healing the loss and healing the physical part, the stitches and all that. It's healing all of your, all your life.
And the illusions of what should be, what should have been, what could have been.
And then I thought that Magnolia was offering a message to me, because I started to meditate. I've meditated for years, but I started to get deep into it again. I hadn't stopped, but I had the time to go for hours a day. And I started to understand that there was an offering here of something beyond, let's get back to square one.
Yeah.
But one thing I do want to say before I forget, because we'll probably move on from that day, there were besides Libby, there were three other women present in the room. Libby's mom, Alicia, and Alex, the midwife.
And Stephanie, the nurse.
Stephanie, the nurse, was there too. And I was very intimidated, and this is, to put this out there for fathers, I was very intimidated by the idea of meeting a baby that wasn't breathing. And my kind of survival thing was, don't do that, just move forward.
You're talking about holding her.
Yeah. Well, just meeting her in general was daunting.
Sure.
And you said, and Alex said, and Joe, Libby's mom, said all the same stuff to me. I remember you and Alex both saying separately that you knew me already well, and that you suggested that I do this. And that was the single most important thing I did in that time frame, was to meet her and then just feel the essence and connect the dots and get an internal image, but a spiritual one as well. Understand the completion of that life on this plane, anyway. You know what I mean? Rather than an open-ended.
Yes.
And then later I spoke to mothers who said it was one of their great regrets not doing that in earlier times, when they would give them drugs and move it along.
I had spoken to a father who didn't do that, and that was his biggest regret.
Yeah, there was a big, I'm really grateful for you to take me on the side and do that, because, it was profound. And it's changed the way my relationship with Magnolia has gone forward, which is, really magical in my own private kind of way.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and it was, to me, as I've lived more and more, I've really seen that, and not at all to compare it, but my son was born extremely premature. Danny almost died in my arms, and while I knew that it was very, very bad that he was being born, this sacredness came over.
Right.
And I think, and I've seen that with other people when they go through these, what could be considered tragedies, the sacredness, if
Well
we
said.
have the sensitivity and the openness to that.
The
Beautifully
openness.
articulated, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a gift when you can connect all that in that time. It's a painful one, but yeah, I'm grateful that I was aware enough to let it happen, and you were really the leader in that. You really were like on a mission where physicality and spirit were not at all separated.
Yes.
You know, and so I was glad that I had a few you around me and to step into that, and because the lessons of that from that moment forward through the rest of my life will, the resonance of that is there.
Yes.
It's there in our relationship. It's there in
Yes.
everything else that we do now. And so that's a giant gift from somebody who was here for a fleeting moment, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, that is so deeply and beautifully said, Scooter, and I think that will change some people's lives who watch this, who will then find themselves in this situation or know people in this situation and can share this with them. I think that it could really change lives. I want to look at, it's funny because I thought I was going to go one direction
Yeah, well,
and something
you know.
else is,
It's that thing about fear too. You know, it's your ultimate fear in front of you happening.
yes,
Right, yeah.
And then you step into it and you're like, oh, it's different than the pre, you know.
Yeah.
the thoughts about the fear.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting to dive into, because in the birthing class, they had us draw and sort of speak about our worst case scenario, and that didn't even register as a possibility within the realm of possibilities.
Yeah.
My greatest fear was that I was going to have to be rushed to the hospital and have a C-section and be cut open. I had no idea that my baby, that our baby,
Right.
that babies die.
Right.
It wasn't even.
Yeah, it wasn't in the
We didn't
realm.
discuss it in class. I mean, I think.
Wow,
I
that's
think-
fascinating.
No.
I think that's. I could be wrong there, because I remember when I was filling out. So we chose to work with a midwife and one of the most renowned doctors in the country, who delivers breech. So it's like, well, let's get him, because if we end up in that situation, I want someone who knows how to work with this, you know. So of course all my girlfriends had their babies at home, and I fell in love with this idea of being in our own space and having our own food and my own bed, and you know, if that was possible, and I knew so many women who had that experience, that's what I wanted. And I think I was a little naive and a little, you know, I'd read a lot of books and I'd watched a lot of movies, and I think I felt heavily influenced by the information that I'd read about home births. And, you know, I think one of my great fears was going to the hospital and having a C-section. But having had a birth in a hospital, I would definitely consider that again. But like I was saying to my friend the other day, in the realm of birthing, there's sort of like two camps. You've got the home birth camp, and they have all their reasonings for why they want to have their baby at home, which I'm on board with. And then you've got the women who decide to have their baby in the hospital because that feels safer. But nowhere in that conversation really is there a conversation about the middle path. Like, what is that middle path?
Yes.
What does it look like? And when do we and how do we open to the possibility of a pivot? And what does that look like? And so I had my
so
heart
important.
set on having her at home.
Right.
And I think in many ways was shaped and influenced by the women around me. And in many ways, if I'm to be completely honest, was approaching my birth from a very idealized mental place. But she had another plan.
Yeah.
She had another plan, because 3 weeks before, I went into labour, she turned and she was breech, which was fine because we had the team, we had the doctor, we had the midwife. But when we signed up to work with the doctor, he said, I am taking, this is the only holiday I take all year, it's Thanksgiving, I won't be here, so you'll be in the hands of your midwife. So I was like, that's great, but then she turned.
Right.
So I was like, whoa, and as we're edging closer to the date of giving birth to her, the likelihood was that the doctor was going to be out of town. So then we had to sit with our team again and negotiate, well, where do we go from here? She's breech, I'm going out of town, your midwife, she can't deliver a vaginal breech. So the only option, well, there were two options. Find a way to work with some practitioners to encourage her to turn, or have a C-section. And so I kept, the C-section was sort of off the table. It was there as an option, but I wanted to sort of exhaust every other option we had available to us before turning towards that, because I really had my heart set on having her at home. So we met with acupuncturists, we met with a whole slew of professionals, and we felt comfortable in approaching different modalities to encourage her to turn. A week later, she still hadn't turned, and I went and saw this practitioner here in LA. He's one of the top doctors in Los Angeles who turns babies, and the process is very gentle and very it's approached very consciously and not forcefully, and it's done over the course of 6 to 8 sessions. But you go in and you work with him, and he releases a lot of the myofascial tension in the body around the womb, around the hips, and then you're on an inversion bed, and so there was a lot of space. And then just slowly he encourages, and if there's no response, he doesn't force anything. So I think on the 6th session, I went to see her, and he just sort of touched me and slightly moved his hands, and she flipped. So she was now head down. We had multiple ultrasounds afterwards. Her heartbeat was strong. We were ready to have her at home. And something, she was born on the 26th, something happened on the evening of the 24th, morning of the 25th. And it wasn't until she was actually born that we realized what had happened to her. So unknowingly, there was a very, very extremely rare complication with her cord insertion. It's called a velamentous cord insertion. And it's really important that more mothers know about this, because often it's not detected on an ultrasound, and it wasn't detected on multiple ultrasounds.
Wow.
We did know at 21 weeks that there was some form of complication with the insertion, but in all of our follow-ups, we never saw anything that indicated a velamentous insertion. So in the simplest terms, in the simplest way to explain it, if you've ever seen a tree where the trunk and then the roots branch out above the ground. So if the trunk is sort of the metaphor, if the trunk is the representation of the cord, the roots, which typically are inside the ground and protected by the earth, aren't. They're above the ground. So when they're more fragile. So if she pulled on it or kicked it, something could have potentially happened. But we didn't know until she was born, because she came out and her cord wasn't attached to her placenta. So the doctor had to actually go in and manually remove the placenta. And then when he looked at it, that's when he realized that there was an issue with the insertion. And, you know, there's so many places we went within the days that followed. You know, and we spoke to you about that. Like, why didn't we see the cord? Why didn't our doctor know? Why wasn't I sent to like a high ultrasound, high risk specialist? And we can live in that realm forever, in the realm of what should have happened and why didn't we? But that realm of of questioning, which is so natural because the mind wants to understand why, it just leads to more questions, which leads to more questions, which leads to more suffering, which leads to more questions.
Yes.
And I remember you very early on, like, helping us sort of stay in the present moment. And yeah, I kind of wish I had someone in my sphere of influence who could have sat me down and said, listen, you know, I know you have this beautiful vision of how you want to give birth to her, and I know you want to have her at home, and I know all of your friends have had their babies at home, you know, but what if she has another plan? What if there's another plan here? And so, you know, I think one of the most important things that I want to put into the conversation today is the urgency that all mothers learn to cultivate a relationship with their child and with their own inner knowing, really, because that was my first full-term pregnancy. I had had a miscarriage before Magnolia. I had 3 after her. So we've really had a quite an intense journey with parenting. But I lost my train of thought.
Do you mind if I interject something?
Yeah.
I think this is an incredibly important conversation because, yes, absolutely, it would have been beautiful to have known this, but to me, this was written.
That's what I was
This
gonna
was
say.
written. And you know, love, I remember saying to you, she's a star child. She's come from so far away, and I believe that she contracted to come in just as much as she did.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what I was saying. I agree with you, and that's where the inner knowing, I think, is really important. That we cultivate that relationship to our inner knowing, because there are things that there were signs that I had. Like, it was almost like I used to journal to her. That's something that I learnt in the USM program, the spiritual psychology program, which I'm so deeply thankful for, because without the training that I went through in that 2-year master's program, I would most certainly be in a different place today. But to have the framework of looking at life through the lens of being a divine being here, having a spiritual experience.
Having a human experience.
A spiritual being. Having the framework of being a spiritual being, having a human experience, I was able to sort of lean into the possibility that this experience was happening for us, that there was some lesson, as you said, to be gained from this experience. And that's not to diminish the pain that came along with it, because there's the part of me that will never, ever, ever get over leaving that hospital without her. And yet there's another part of me that that understands that this, like you said, was written, that this is the way it was meant to be. And who are we to decide for her what should have been?
Yeah.
You know, and I truly believe that if we were meant to know about the cord insertion, we would have known.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's
especially
where
as conscious as the two of you
Yeah,
are.
and that's where the peace enters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Scoop?
I don't remember now. Yeah, just that all that stuff. It's super obvious to me that this was the way it was supposed to be. Now, even I had a reading with a really renowned medium, and she knew nothing about any of this, and she alluded to a message from the other side about she knows that you knew me,
Yeah.
that she was not going to stay.
Yeah.
and that was thankful that I helped to impart that over time to Libby.
Yeah.
Which it would be harder for Libby to grasp that at first.
Of course.
Yeah. So there's, yeah.
Well, and looking at that spiritual perspective, I want to just talk about for a minute that a picture was taken. I think that I'm the one who took the picture. I'm not sure where the light turned.
Right.
So tell us about that and your mother.
Well, you go.
Well, you sent them to me because our midwife was taking photos.
Oh, my mother, that was.
And then you sent me a bunch of photos from the room, and we had all the lights out in the room, but there was a light on in the restroom. So we were getting some illumination in the space. But there was all these dark pictures, dark meaning like just the light, there wasn't a lot of light, but it was me and Magnolia, me and Steve and Magnolia, and then all of a sudden there's this bright yellow, blown out, nothing, like just bright, brilliant yellow picture.
Light.
Yeah. And then there was another picture of me and you and her, and me and you and her that was dark. So there's this one image that shows up in the middle of this.
Yeah, it was very tricky.
And we were like, well, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this? And I think we cast you.
What was that?
I think we asked you,
Yeah.
where did that picture come
Yes,
from?
you did. And I said, I think that was her. That's her soul. That's who she really is. You know, because it was normal light.
Yeah.
Normal. So it's not like there was a malfunction in
No,
the
it was
camera.
very,
It was
it
her
was an
soul. I think it
anomalous
was a
photo,
communication
right,
to you.
Yeah.
Well, and also I think you and Michael had talked about it. And then he had said, you had both said, that's when her soul entered the room.
Yeah.
I went to visit my mother on Thanksgiving Day, which was a super heavy day, because my mother had dementia at that point, and she was pretty far gone in the nursing home. And we would spend Thanksgiving, you know, my whole life I spent Thanksgiving with most of them, with my mother, with us. And, you know, I couldn't communicate to her what had happened, and I didn't even know how to do it. At that point, I was spun out. It was like, what was it, one day later or something?
Yeah.
So I went there, and I just sat there, and it was very heavy, obviously. I just sat there. And I couldn't really say anything to my mother. My mother was already half or three-quarters onto the other side already, and also had a lot of psychic inclination in her to begin with. And I couldn't tell her anything. I really couldn't say anything. I just sat there, and out of the blue she said she was beautiful.
No, you showed her your phone. You told me you were with her and trying to explain to her, and then you pulled out your phone and you showed her some photos, and then you showed her that picture of the yellow image, the light.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah,
I
and
just
she
remember her
said
saying
she's
that.
beautiful.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
remember her saying that. Yeah, that was really wild. Yeah, those kinds of there's been a lot of that, a lot of those signs. I think signs is the best way to put it. Yeah, there's been a lot of signs, but there's really a lot of practicality to it too in teaching healing and you know, going inward with it and making it be somehow positive.
Yeah.
You know, it's a funny thing, when you lose a child, you're in a club alone.
Right.
Unless somebody shares that experience. And they really just can't relate to it. They shouldn't relate to it. So that was very awkward for me for a long time. And then it became not awkward at all. It became like, well, I got to know some things that, you know, I got to know.
But we were pretty frightened to leave the house in the beginning. I mean, we didn't go to any restaurants, we didn't go to any shops or supermarkets for at least 3 weeks, if not 4.
Yeah.
And one of the most helpful things that people did for us, I mean, Cheryl sent food for 2 weeks straight. The chef would come, she'd knock on the door, she'd hand us the food and she'd leave, and the next day she'd come back, she'd hand us the food and she'd leave. And I remember not having to cook. Mum was there, we didn't have to clean anything, and we really just got to live through the simple act of waking up, taking a shower, having a tea, connecting with one another, eating food, going to sleep. It was just this very slow, ritualistic movement through our days. And actually ritual became a huge part of how we came together as a couple to heal. I remember putting altars all around the house. I would set up incense and candles almost in every room. And we wake up and light an incense and we'd close our eyes and we would talk to her. We would talk out loud to her. We would ask to always feel her love around us. You know, often we'd say, we don't understand what's going on. We don't understand why you had to go, but we love you. And we'd hold each other and we would just be in the act of praying into the space. And that really helped ground us throughout the day. But like, people would bring food, they would leave flowers at our door. Like, it was almost like, I think there's a poem in the book titled "Our Home Has Become a Holy Temple." And it's literally like, I felt like people would leave food and flowers at the door and they wouldn't knock and they wouldn't ask anything of us. They would just come and leave their offerings, and that felt so incredibly supportive. And then we had friends that would just text. Like, I had one friend that said, is it okay if I just send you some emojis, some love hearts every day so you know that I'm thinking about you? And I just thought that was so lovely. And she said, I don't expect you to return my messages. I don't expect you to reach out at all. I just want you to know that I'm thinking of you and that I love you. And that was just so lovely.
Also, the grief is something to talk about because it's so important for people to understand that it has to be acknowledged when it's there.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no way around it.
And in the West, we're taught to run from it and hide from it and bury it
Get
and
over
cover
it. Stiff upper lip.
And so, particularly in my shoes, because Libby's was very in touch with it, it was such a visceral, physical experience. In my shoes, I was in support mode a lot, you know, because I was physically okay and I was able to just have a semblance of the other aspects of life, a semblance, you know, not too much. So my grief was sometimes on hold, but you were so adept at accessing your grief, and it was so intense that it triggered mine. And it was, you remember that? It was very helpful for me because I may have buried it a bit more than I should have. But I couldn't, because every couple of days or every other day, Libby would have like a giant moment of grief, and I would be there, and it would trigger mine, and it was so we were both going through that at the same time, but it was cathartic in that way, you know, and really important, because that's an aspect of life that is just not dealt with properly.
100%.
Yeah, and he would run around and close the doors and the windows, because at that time
I don't want to scare the neighbors.
But it was really some of the sounds, the very deep, guttural, primal wailing, like, it felt so like biblical. It felt like so necessary, and I believe it is so necessary that energy find a way to move out, whether it's in the office with a therapist or with your partner or with a parent or with a friend, but to allow the grace for the natural process of mourning.
Well, they do that. They wail.
To occur.
You know, and it was interesting because it would trigger me, and then I would pull myself together and go downstairs, and I'd see Libby's mom on the couch. She could hear it from there, and it had triggered her. And but it's a crucial aspect to healing. and to deepening your connection to yourself and to
Yes.
Intimacy.
Intimacy, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to underscore for people too, because it's like, you know, we've all had our different moments of grief, and I know when both my parents and your parents died just
Right
a few
around the
weeks
same
apart,
time,
right
yeah,
around
yeah.
the same time.
And my mom.
And your mom.
Yeah.
And people don't, when people aren't comfortable with their own grief, they don't know how to support.
Yeah, they don't
So
know.
I think it's important to underscore, like, just be there. Like, the person who is grieving just needs you to be there, and not,
To
for
listen.
God's sake, say it'll get better, you know, but to
Right.
hold empathy first.
Yes.
And just, I mean, I remember, Lib, just, you came to my home and just holding you from behind, just while you, I don't even think I said a word, and it was a good hour while you just wept. And that is what we need when we're in grief, is somebody just to hold space for us.
And so it's important to claim that space for yourself as
Yes,
well, because
very
there were
important.
times where people, out of their own inability to sit in the weight of it, just, there was a lot of advice that was given. There was a lot of like platitudes about God doesn't give you anything you can't handle, and you can have another one, and all this band-aid support,
Yeah.
and you know, and it would make me I'd get really angry and really frustrated until I realized, how could they possibly know? How could anyone possibly know,
It's that club.
unless you've lost a child, how to show up? So and then I started having more compassion and understanding, like, oh, this is coming from a place of discomfort and not knowing what to say. So there were moments where, instead of letting myself fester in the upset, I would just say, listen, I'm not sure why you're sharing this with me. Could you explain to me why you're talking about your friend who just got pregnant 3 weeks after I've just lost my baby? And then, you know, it would be like, I don't know, I'm not sure. Well, are you sharing because you think it might be helpful for me in my process? Well, yeah, I am. Okay, well, it's actually really not helpful, you know.
Yeah.
So please, you know, this is my boundary that I need to draw for myself. So, you know, so that's important too. It's like coming into the awareness of, like, really helping the people around you understand, like, how they can show up for you.
Yes.
So if someone says, I would love to help you, please let me know how I can support you. Be very specific. Okay, I need you to come around in the afternoon and do the dishes for me. I need you to come and take out the trash. I would love you to bring over a meal on Wednesday night. Like, specifics that can ground that action for people.
And opening yourself to receive.
Yes, very big.
Yeah, I had my version of that. Was I decided, because I ventured out one day and I went for a smoothie to Cafe Gratitude, where I would sometimes sit at the counter, and I saw the manager who I knew, and he and I was very, this was very daunting leading up to this, like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I see people, but I had to kind of go out and do it. And he said, so is it a boy or a girl? And in that moment, I just sort of broke it down in the realest way I could. And I said, look, this is what happened. And I told him what happened, and, you know, he kind of broke down and stuff. And then I decided from that point forward, this is not my burden to carry.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to just lay it out there.
Yeah.
And I started to do that with everyone, and however they handled it or didn't.
Yeah.
And I it freed me, and I also embraced again the truth of the thing, and rather than kind of managing the other side of the conversation.
The other
You're
person.
not responsible for their response.
Right,
their
and
feelings.
that's become an empowering thing in a lot of other areas of life, but that was sort of a real turning point in being able to not soften things. I mean, I'm not trying to freak somebody out,
Right.
but you know, I'm the one who suffered the trauma. So this is, if you want to know, this is how it went.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's a healing thing as well, to be able to embrace that rather than get all in your head about perceptions and
What will people think?
And yeah,
Yeah.
and how they're going to field it on the other side.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a beautiful poem in here. They're all beautiful. This is my book, all these highlighting and folded pages. But I want to talk about how this. You told me that 60% of relationships, marriages end when this occurs.
Within the first 3 years.
Within the first 3 years, and yet you both got closer. And I have observed that. I mean, you always had a beautiful marriage,
Yeah.
but I have observed you both getting closer and closer through this.
Our relationship to that point was really ideal. It was fantastic. It really was. But there is a level of depth that you haven't been able to access yet.
Yeah.
That you break open, and if you use it the right way, it's just that much more enriching. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like I look at pictures of us before. You know, even what pictures where Libby's pregnant and we're like super happy. We're hanging out with my father in New York and everything's great. And you look radiant and the pregnancy's going great and we're all excited and everything's great. But then there's just a deeper relationship to living and feeling and love and the journey that's ensued after that has reframed the tastes and sounds and sights and emotions and feelings of life.
Yeah, there's a level of authenticity present now that wasn't there before, like of rawness, of realness,
It's
of
hard,
expression that wasn't there before. In fact, we went into the Whole Foods market on Lincoln. That was the first place we went to when we left the house together, was to go and pick up some things for the house. And I remember those glass sliding doors opening and the smell of the oranges and the smell and the colors were so vibrant. And we were walking through and I remember people like rushing by and like with their carts and I felt like I was walking through water and I turned to him and I said, did we used to live like that? And he said, that used to be us.
Yeah,
And I was like, wow, I hope to never be like that ever again, because it really brought us down to the simplicity of life and moving through life.
Yeah, time stood still during the loss, the trauma part, and then it was forever reshaped moving forward. And there was like access. And again, like I look at it differently than, it's different than just like therapy stuff. It's like a little bit divine. It's almost like she gave that gift, you know, of like you two are going to really find the pot of gold now.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's a powerful takeaway from it. It's definitely had a big powerful impact on. I remember when we were in the Caribbean for our first vacation, and the water, and we laughed and we like had some. Life was exponentially more vivid. It still is from that. Like even the way I express this is much different than I would have at some other point.
Yeah, I think you say, because the thing that I love about this offering, because I did a lot of research when I finally decided to start putting the poems together. There are a lot of books in this domain about loss, but they're all pretty much primarily written from the voice of the mother. There's very, very, very little, if any. There's one book actually that I came across written by a father, but there's very little talk of the father or the other partners, the one holding space, their grief.
Yeah.
So I I asked Steve if he would make a contribution, and he wrote the foreword to the book. And then I was cleaning up his desk one day about a year ago, and I saw this pad of paper with all this writing on it, and I saw our daughter's name multiple times on the page, and I was like, what is this? And he said, oh, this is some writing that our therapist Angela, she had me do. And I said, well, could I read it? And he said, sure. And I said, what is it about? And he said, well, it's my journey of that day. It's my journey of the loss. It's my experience. It's what I went through. It's how I felt that day in the hospital and the days that unfolded after. So I read it, and it was so incredibly humbling to revisit that moment in time and stand in his shoes and stand in his skin and to feel the things he felt during that time, because the grief is so intense that it's so easy to just get stuck in your own process and forget that your partner also is having their own unique process with the loss. And I think that's something that very early on we saw was going on, and we had to learn to navigate, and that's probably why we stayed so close together, because there was this acknowledgement of like, well, this is what I went through and this is what I felt, and it's very different to what you went through and what you felt. So how do we find that ground to sort of hold space for one another's loss and the expression of that loss? So that was really helpful, like finding that ground of like, well, he's really busy and he's not really crying very much, so does that mean that he doesn't feel the loss in the way that I do? And it's not. It's like feeling as deeply, if not more, but not having the ability to communicate. So it was like, it was a really beautiful dance we were in, because there were moments where it was like really intense for me, and that would trigger his, which would then make me love him even more when he would break down and he would cry and he would grieve and he would get all messy, and that's when I was like, that's when I fell in love with him even more, because it was like, it was like, but for someone in that position, holding that space of the masculine and the provider and the protector, to see that mask come down and to feel the tenderness underneath as the mother, as the wife, as the partner, was so profound for me, and that's why I love. So basically, this piece of writing that I found ended up in the book, and I think it really,
so beautiful.
I think it really completes the book.
Yes.
And it offers the two sides of the story.
I think when you
100%.
watch your partner like in warrior mode, it's inspiring also, you know.
And you talk about her being a warrior and the female warrior. This book it's Libby's poems, but the prose it's from Libby too, but it's also, there's two pieces of gorgeous prose from you. And I do think we don't hear from the father enough. I mean, I'll just pick a place. What I saw and observed in Libby. I wanted to make you read this.
I don't remember any of this either. No, you go.
But what I saw and observed in Libby that is often unacknowledged in females are the qualities of a warrior. To carry life and nurture it in your body, to put it forth into the world and then have it snuffed away, and to find your way back onto your feet is something that can't really be taught. In bearing witness to it, I understand the power of the feminine, the resilience of the feminine, the fierceness and knowledge that is in the feminine about life. The masculine can't quite carry it unless it tunes into it.
Wow, I don't even remember writing that. It must have been like childhood.
But that's what he would tune into when he would fall apart. You know, you can call it masculine, feminine. It's just energy. But when he dropped into that rawness, it was so beautiful, and it made me feel like I wanted to step into the role of protecting him.
Beautiful.
So yeah, I'm just so grateful.
That's so poignant that you picked that, because I really I don't remember that, but that really does sum up so much of what was gained on on my, like so much wisdom was downloaded through this journey, you know, about what this is all about here. And that too resonates on a level of like, this is what we need in the world.
Yes.
And the
You know,
humility as well.
This is why these shows and these podcasts are so important, because we really have to re-educate the system.
Yes. Tell us, you know, on that note of and really, when you get this book, it's there's so much wisdom and light in it, and it's a father's thoughts is what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
There are gifts as much as any gifts that I know. There are gifts as much as any gifts that I know. This is what you're talking about that came from this. Make no mistake, in no way do they lessen the pain, loss, or wounding that I carry. It was a slap on the hand as if to say, your life is still magical and great, and I see that vividly. It gave me a deeper connection to Libby and to what true gratitude is. The pain is the same. I draw upon what I learned in the moments when Libby felt that life was not worth living anymore. I never felt that way, but I didn't share the physicality of the loss. Through this experience, I've learned that it's possible to be vulnerable, yet lead at the same time.
And that's what we need now on this planet more than anything is leadership. That leadership with heart,
Yes.
leadership with soul, leadership
Especially now.
with vulnerability.
I remember
Yeah.
you saying, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" The only answer I had was like, "We're going to live." And we certainly live a lot more fully now than then.
Yeah, with more gratitude and
It was like-
appreciation. Yeah,
You
it's like the
know.
veil got lifted,
Yeah.
the mask got lifted. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it
It
was.
wasn't rites of passage. I felt that
Yeah.
as it was happening, actually, but I didn't know. It was impossible to make sense of what that is. But
The word that kept coming to me from the very beginning was initiation, initiation. And in fact, that was almost going to be the title of the book, Initiation, because it was just one moment after the next. It was a new teaching would present itself, a new opportunity to let go of what we thought should have been, another opportunity to open to what was being presented. And I think her voice kept coming in really strong for me in the days and weeks that followed. And I would just write down what I heard. And so I really encourage all of your viewers, you know, everybody, no matter what the grief is or the loss is, to allow yourself to give yourself the dignity of your process in honoring where you're at in each step along the journey. And for me, it was a pad of yellow paper and a pen, and I literally walked around the house holding that pad of paper and pen, and I would just write down, I would allow myself to just write down what I was feeling. And I think there's a poem in the book, a very short one, about that actually,
Well,
that
please
says,
read it to us.
it's about putting your pain on the page. It says, it's called Your Arms. When you put your pain on the page, your arms are free to carry something far more exquisite. And so when the pain is able to be released, there is an opening in which something greater can fill that space.
And what is that?
It's love. It's love. It's love. It is the currency of love. It's her, it's him, it's God, it's creation, it's spirit, it's yeah.
You know, when you said it's the thing that's so hard is I'm going to paraphrase you,
Sure.
but what do I do with this love that I
Yeah.
had for Magnolia? And my thought was, you turn it around.
You did, and that's exactly what we did. We had to turn it back on ourselves.
Yeah.
And that, again, was another gift, where she, in her absence, taught me how to love myself. Actually, that's also in a poem. If you don't mind, can I read it? So this is the poem that closes out the book. It's titled "When All Is Said and Done." When all is said and done, the sun will rise again, and I will walk outside across the hardened concrete. The soft, wet grass will welcome these worn feet, and I will greet myself as I did the day before. When all is said and done, these arms and lips that yearn to kiss her tender face and belly will surprise me. I once thought I'd never recover. I now know beyond a doubt this was the answer to my prayer. God, show me how to serve. Show me my place in this world. And she came like fire and water and baptized every ache in me. And I held her, and she didn't move, and she didn't breathe, and she didn't speak. She ripped off the bandage on the wound that would not heal, and in her absence taught me how to love myself. She holds me even now, telling me to let it come out, let it come out, let it come out, no matter how painful. When all is said and done, the sun will rise again, and I will walk outside across the hardened concrete. The soft, wet grass will welcome these worn feet, and I will greet myself again as I did the day before. I once thought I'd never recover. I now know beyond all doubt she was the answer to my prayer.
Yeah. That sort of says it all.
Really does.
Yeah, she was our miracle. And I keep coming back to just pulling apart the fallacy of any notion of what life should look like, you know, and it just, and it brings me back to what if this was her purpose? What if it had to be this way? What if these words that came through me was the gift she came to give? Who am I to stand in the way of that? Who am I to question that? And so I keep surrendering into the unknown. I keep surrendering into the mystery of life. And I keep saying yes. I keep showing up. I keep opening my heart. And, you know, there are moments where I kick and scream and drag and, you know, I don't like what's going on, but I don't have to like what happened in order to accept it. And I don't have to love what happened in order to accept it. Acceptance for me is just saying, well, this is the way it is. This is the way it is. And if I can come into the acceptance of this is the way it is, then this beautiful vista of possibility opens before me, and the weight dissolves, and I feel free. Yeah.
That's fantastic. For me, it pushed me into a deeper relationship to the spiritual realm of things, and I don't mean that as in support of my healing, like to make me feel better about it. Oh, she's up there, it makes me feel better. It isn't that at all.
It's not a spiritual bypass.
No.
Yeah.
It's a, for me, myself, and I, it's a proof of a connection to something else beyond the physical. And it wasn't done as a crutch. It's the reverse of that. It's like, oh, okay, there's a whole other realm of understanding and growth and knowingness to be had if you can get that lesson, you know, if you can tune into that.
But that's the gift in the grief.
Yeah, that's the gift.
That you don't get unless you go into the grief.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's probably the ultimate one, is probably you really find out when you pass, you know. But to be so close to that, which we all have, you know, and I've been in the room with people in the past, we both have, and you know something is afoot. It isn't just
Something mystical.
Yeah. But this really was that, but on a level where, like, in a daily life, it's like, oh yeah, another one of those. You know, it's cool. You know, it's not for everyone,
Right.
but it's definitely deepening.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. I mean, it's fierce grace.
Yes.
It's fierce grace,
That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
Well, I have the very unenviable task of doing my best, as it's part of the show, to lead us in a meditation to try to impart to us, to our listeners, some of what you so generously and richly shared. And then I will tell you all how to find, I will tell you now, She Was Born. Go to bookbaby.com and also Amazon. But Book Baby's a little better because, again, 100% of the proceeds are donated to Every Mother Counts. And more of the proceeds will go from Book Baby. And please leave reviews. I will tell you all of this again after the meditation. So the meditation you can certainly do if you're driving. And then I also tell you about Libby's retreats, as well as a little bit more about some beautiful ways you can partake of the richness they're sharing. So if you would just take a moment, and if you're not driving, close your eyes and really open your hearts. And again, you may want to place your hands on your heart chakra and just connect to the numinous, to the holy, to the sacred. Let's take the glass ceiling off of the idea that that level of sacredness can only come with tragedy. Let's experience that sacredness now. There is truly no limitation other than what we suppose there might be. As Libby said so beautifully, let's take off the fallacy that life has to look like what we think it should. Perhaps life is so much more beautiful than what we can imagine. So just see in front of you the most exquisite sanctuary. And this is the sanctuary of the soul, made of light, like the beautiful photograph of Magnolia Grace, full of golden and white light. See this sanctuary right in front of you. And you know, if you open the door to that sanctuary, there is no return to ordinary life, to fast-paced and maddening life. Because some part of you can't unknow the depth of grace that enters in when you absolutely commit to knowing the true and unmitigating spirit of life itself. What we call life may be just an infinitesimal part of actual existence. As Scooter was talking about that life beyond life that he now knows beyond doubt. And so now you really decide, do I want to open this door or do I want to stay on this side where it's comfortable and familiar? And yet, an unseen hand beckons you from the other side into the heaven side of the line in the sand that says you were meant for more, you are more. And so perhaps you decide to open that door and to walk into that sanctuary to experience the incredible ecstasy on the other side. And though you may be a bit hesitant, you walk indeed into the sanctuary. And now you have such a great joy that overtakes you, a wild, raucous laughter. For spirit is not just staid and stoic, serene even, but spirit is true, abounding joy. And you see here, perhaps you open your arms and see yourself right with a loved one who has passed over into the other side. And they laugh and smile and tease you and tell you you don't have to die to know the ecstasy of existence. For I, your loved one, bring it to you now on this next breath. So you take a deep breath in and you breathe in the joy of the eternal now. And your loved one now has a sweet and special message for you. So in the silence, allow yourself to receive it from that one that your heart has missed so. And if there's tears, let them fall. And if there's gratitude, express it to them now. Open your heart to receive their loving even more. You see, there is no barrier between you. And so they fully enter your beingness, the sanctuary of your soul now, filling you with their love, their tender grace. And what do you have to say to them? And you open your heart and you receive even more the love of God that joins your hearts now forevermore, opening and allowing that divine love to fill you. And while it seems that you may part now from your loved one, you know that is not even possible, for they are within you, always in your heart. And so you bid adieu just to this form. As you take in a deep breath, breathing in the truth that you are the presence of love. And so you walk out of that sanctuary now, knowing you're not quite finished with life here. But now you walk out light and carefree and full of the truth of love. And so be it. Amen.
Amen. Wow. That was very powerful.
Well, actually, I think we're all crying.
Wow. I saw Magnolia immediately.
Yes.
I saw the whole room was yellow. There was this beautiful bed. And my mom was there, and she was there, and it's like we get to just relax over here and like be in this energy. And yeah, I saw her growing up. Like I saw her as a baby, I saw her as a 9-year-old, and I just felt her as like a 20-year-old. I just felt her energy growing up, like you often say, she's growing up alongside us. And the message that I got was, don't waste a minute, from Magnolia. And then from my mom, what I heard was, go get it. And then the other message was, we're always with you.
Yeah.
And wow, that was very, very beautiful, very powerful. Thank you so much.
Great.
You're so welcome. I think I was channeling you.
Good
Or
one.
channeling Magnolia.
But you said the door, and like there's this whole section in here that I wrote about being with my mom in palliative care. And she said, death is like walking through a door. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, it was so beautiful. You know, she went up and down on her journey through the loss.
Yeah.
And there was this deep sadness for what she was about to lose, but there was also this deep knowing of there was something else So it says here, the most memorable talk I had with my mum during her sickness was about dying. I remember sitting in her room in palliative care one day, and out of the blue, she said to me, "I want you to know, honey, that I am not afraid of dying." And she continued, saying that in her meditation, she was becoming aware of herself as pure energy, an infinite energy not bound by this body. She described this energy as a warm golden light, and she said it felt wonderful. She said she was unafraid because she was starting to realize this energy was who she really was, and this energy never ends. She said, "I'm not afraid to die because I'm just opening and closing the door." When I asked her to tell me more, she said, "Death is like opening a door and walking through to the other side. When I close my eyes, when I close that door, I will no longer be Joan. I will no longer be who I think I am, but I will remember who I have always been, this energy that is everywhere and in everything."
Cool.
And in the years that have unfolded since Magnolia and my mother's deaths, I've come to realize that I can choose to live each day in gratitude for the time I got to share with them, or I can dismantle my life and let everything I love fall to the wayside because of what happened to them. And that's really the choice point. And I think it's so important to know that we have the opportunity to choose into how we will hold these experiences that come to all of us in our lives, because loss is inevitable. This physical existence doesn't continue in this unique way forever. So, you know, when she says enjoy every minute, I really want to carry that forward, to continue to enjoy every minute.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Scoot, do you have any closing thoughts?
I guess just, you know, to go as deep into the life experience as you can while you're having it. All of it. You know, the pain, the joy, the highs and lows. They're all there for some reason, you know. And just to follow that, I think that's the reward is in there, in all of it.
Yeah.
It's not always pleasant, but I think it isn't necessarily just to skate above that.
Yeah.
That's not really, I think, where it's at. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, our beloved listeners and readers, I did warn you this was going to be a very intimate, personal show, and I think an incredibly beautiful one. Please go to bookbaby.com and find this book is exquisite. You heard a few poems from it, and the poems and the prose are incredible, absolutely incredible. So go to bookbaby.com and just search for She Was Born, or you can go to Amazon. The book is on pre-sale right now. You can get the digital copy right away, right now, don't wait. On Amazon, please leave a review, 5-star only, because that's what it deserves. And you can get the ebook right now. When does the paperback come out?
On Amazon, November 13th.
November.
Yeah.
Is that Magnolia's birth?
No, it's a new moon. It's just like a special portal of time.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
November 13th you can get the paperback, but you can go buy, and please do buy the digital version now. Libby has these gorgeous retreats with Nicole Tronfio, who happens to be Gary Clark Jr.'s wife.
And the founder of Bump Suit, this incredible company. She's doing amazing work in the world. Yeah, she sponsored the retreat in Los Angeles last weekend, and it was so profound. So we're going to continue to do that work together.
And you can find out about those retreats on Instagram. It's really easy to find Libby. It's at Libby June Weintraub, at Libby, I'm going to spell that for you, LibbyJuneWeintraub. So just go to Instagram. If you cannot remember, I'm pretty sure you're going to remember Libby June Weintraub. If you cannot remember that, go to my Instagram and go to my followers or friends, and you'll find Libby. Nicole Trunfio is easy to find on Instagram as well. Bumpsuit is easy to find on Instagram, and you can find out about their retreats there. They're exquisite at an amazing, beautiful location, and just so intimate and really safe and important. Remember, 100% of the proceeds of this goes to Every Mother Counts, which is really to improve, I know it's to improve maternal mother health.
It's a global organization.
Yes.
So when we thought about where to donate the proceeds, there were a lot of organizations within the US, but I felt like Magnolia would want to touch more mothers. So Every Mother Counts does a beautiful job, and they're working with mothers in remote villages and really bringing a lot of care and education and support to mothers everywhere around the world. And I really love the work that Christy's doing.
Christy's a powerful force.
She's a powerful, beautiful light in the world. So we wanted to channel all of this loving energy into her work, to support her work.
It's nice to bump into people who are just trying to put healing forth.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what this is for too. It's just to help people.
Yeah, I mean, this is literally, obviously these two are doing this to give, to serve, and this is the kind of energy we need in this world. I mean, it's just, and Libby, you are such a gifted writer, and Scoot too. Who knew? Who knew you were being a low writer about it? I had no idea you could write so well. It's just gorgeous. I think maybe there's a book in there for you.
Maybe.
And actually, I have a book coming out in a bit too. So aliciadoss.com, if you would like to get on the list, so I can send you excerpts from it. That would be great. Please do join us for the next show with John Morton and Lee Taylor Young. John Morton is the spiritual director of the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness. Lee Taylor Young is an Emmy-winning actress. It'll be also a very beautiful spiritual show. Join us in January for Rodley Valentine, 4 times #1 best-selling author of books on angels, also a Hay House author. Oh my goodness, thank you both so much. This
Thanks
has
for having
been
us.
Great.
Such an honor. You know where to find She Was Born. Thank you so much, listeners and watchers, for joining us on Live Your Love with the amazing Libby June Weintraub and Stephen Scooter Weintraub. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Lots of love, live your love, and we'll see you next month.